Moving on to Apple this morning, the shares are surging this morning after better than expected earnings last night. iPhone sales saw a 20% pop in Q2, but profit levels saw a decline for the second successive quarter. Brian Marshall is an analyst with ISI. He has a strong buy and a price target of 600. Arik Hesseldahl is a senior editor over at All Things D. Guys, good morning to both of you.
Good morning.
Arik, let me start with you. I mean, you say basically pretty good to neutral in terms of the actual results, but we're in a period where it's really new products time to shine. Is that going to happen?
Yeah, if you look back at Apple's history, generally speaking, it has been in the fall and at the beginning of the new year where Apple starts setting the table about new products that will either come out later in the year or toward the consumer, the holiday buying season. And so there's also a catalyst for iPad and Mac sales that are coming on. There's always the back-to-school bump. Apple always does deals to try and move a lot of that inventory. But it's really about a new catalyst. We haven't seen a new fundamental category of Apple products since the first iPad, and that was 2010.
Yeah, and Brian, I mean, they may have knocked some of the real naysayers off of the ledge last night, but, I mean, if there is a plan for September, October, they're still keeping their cards close to the vest.
Definitely. If you think about it, Apple's obviously one of the most secretive companies out there, rightfully so. Obviously, they don't want to let the public know about what's coming down the pike. But I think in addition to what Arik said about new products, I think gross margins are a key part of it as well. Guiding for 36 to 37% gross margins for the September quarter. That's a quarter at the end of the quarter when we expect the low-cost iPhone to come into the marketplace. And many were expecting this would be a below corporate average gross margin product. That's not our view. We actually think it's going to be above corporate average, perhaps 40% gross margins. And so I think the guidance is indicative of the fact that Apple continues to migrate down that cost curve and is able to maintain some attractive level of gross margin in the product families.
So, Brian, a year ago they were 42.8. I mean, do we get back to those levels, or are we just looking at a slower rate of decline on margin?
Yeah, I wouldn't hold your breath on that one, Carl. I don't think we're ever going to see the low 40s again. I mean, ultimately, what was driving that was incremental 85% gross margins on the resale of NAND flash, in addition to very high carrier subsidies on the iPhone side. Both of which are kind of moving against the company right now. In addition, we have a low-end migration mix. The market is definitely growing much faster at low-end smartphones than at the high end. And we estimate the iPhone 4 is in the low 30s gross margins, the iPhone 4S is in the low 40s gross margins, and the iPhone 5 is in the low 50s. And so that obviously works against the company over time. But we feel pretty comfortable that margins are going to be above 35% for the next several quarters.
Arik, I understand that we always look forward to what the product announcements are going to be, but I wonder in this environment now, after so much time has elapsed, whether we're overplaying the prospect of what products might come to market and underplaying the strength of the iPhone. I mean, sales of the iPhone in the United States up 51% from a year ago, up 66% from Japan. The core of the business is still the iPhone, and surely it's doing well.
It certainly is, but it's beating expectations. But one market that Apple hasn't really penetrated well yet, it still hasn't gotten that deal with China Unicom. It does well in China, but it doesn't have that deal with China Unicom that has been. They've long been doing this negotiation dance.
So
go ahead.
What is the problem there, Arik? I mean, is that solved by a lower cost iPhone?
Yeah, I think the gross the blended ASP on iPhones is beginning to come down. I think it was at 600 or thereabout. Brian would know better than I would, and it's come down partially because these older model iPhones are selling better than expected, and so that's dragging down the average price per unit quite a bit. That iPhone 4, the 2 generations back, is going for free in some cases, and iPhone 4S, plenty of people are still buying that at a greatly reduced price from its original price. So Apple's taking a hit there.
Brian, there's a big strategic debate going on right now about where these guys go. The Journal today takes a crack at it. I mean, they take the Mac. It was a superior machine in its day. It ended up with very low market share and essentially was just drowned by the advent of the PC and Windows. Do you think they should continue to make the best product they can and not go for scale, or do they just have to play in the law of large numbers now?
Well, if you look at Apple over the last couple of years, obviously they flourished at the high end. They dominated the high end, they maximized the profit pool, and they basically put it in their back pocket. going forward, I think if Apple's going to reaccelerate and become once again a double-digit grower on the top line and the bottom line, they're going to have to hit the mass market. And so I think this migration down the SKU stack, if you will, with the low-cost iPhone and perhaps other products down the road as well, probably see a couple $100 iWatch, things like that, et cetera, basically hitting the mass market. I mean, if you think about it, they have over 600 million installed base of iOS users out there. So that's a phenomenal opportunity to monetize, but the problem is they're going to have to monetize it at lower price points. And so they're going to have to sell more with pretty low cost if they're going to maintain their margins. And I think they've really kind of maximized the high end. Now they have to migrate to the mid and the low end if they really want to continue the growth going forward.
Yeah, we're going to learn a lot more about that decision in the coming months. Yep. Arik, Brian, thanks so much, guys. Have a good one.